All right, today's a special day. I'm Rob. This is my brother Charlie. We have a very special guest. It's been all over Strava over the last while. If you're on Strava, and Greg is all over, not just on Strava, but he just came back. Our guest today just came back from France, and he did the world famous UTMB, la Ultra Trail du Mont Blanc, the Ultra Trail du Mont Blanc, and it's basically the most competitive. It's kind of like it's the world championships of ultra, the most competitive, toughest, highest DNF race. It's like just the absolute pinnacle of ultra running. Greg Penner, our guest today, congratulations on finishing that race last month. We're so proud of you, and thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. I mean, that intro, that gives me chills just saying it. It's
Dude,
true. It's an amazing event. It's an amazing event, and happy to chat about it.
Greg, I watched the videos last night. I was like, I want to understand more about this race. And I knew a little bit about it. I knew it was hard, and I knew it was, but I mean, a lot of stuff's hard, right? But this is like next level. The amount of elevation, I don't want to steal all your thunder here, but like the 30,000 meters, you had multiple kilometers where you're going up and down 250 meters per kilometer, multiple times. So like, we're talking like a 25% incline, sometimes 25% incline. It's 47% DNF, I think it was this year. Like, just an unbelievable race. How did it go? Let's start with that, and then you can talk us through the race.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, the event is epic. So, I mean, for me, I've been an endurance athlete a long time. And of course, like you said, this event kind of sits kind of as a Super Bowl, as kind of the pinnacle of trail ultra running. Especially mountain trail running, right? You can have ultra running, the ultra distance, but this one really brings the mountain side into it. And then, I mean, that's just like for a Manitoban, right? I mean, that is just wild. So it's always captured the imagination, right? I mean, the media does a great job advertising it, the pro racers, all those kind of things. So it's kind of been on my bucket list for quite some time. It's not easy to get into either. I mean, we can get into that, but the basic premise of the race, you said it's 176 kilometers, 10,000 meters of elevation gain and loss. It starts at 6 p.m. to add even more weird things for our normal rhythm. You have a very big set of mandatory gear. So you actually have to run with kind of a big backpack, which is good, bad. You're carrying a lot of extra weight. And you're just circumnavigating Mont Blanc in France. You run through 3 countries. You go from France into into Italy, into Switzerland, and then back into France, going right around the mountain, climbing, descending endlessly.
Yeah, it's a lot of climbing in the same. Okay, so let's back up. So we know and I want to talk you through the race after, but can we go to like before, like a year ago or 2 years ago or 5 years ago when you said, I want to do that race? What attracted you to it? You said it's a Super Bowl of racing. How did you talk about how you qualified for it? Talk about like the lead up to the race, if that's all right.
For sure. So, I mean, I've been a runner for over 20 years. So, I mean, it's the race itself is only about 21 years old. So it's really grown, like it's really taken off of that scene. And I mean, I've done the marathons. I mean, I've done a lot of them. I've done different ultras. But as I got longer and longer distances, this one obviously was starting to stick out, especially kind of, in the media, or, you just see it advertised, like the videos, the scenery, like the raw landscape, and then just 3 countries kind of captures you. And this kind of the vibe they set. So it probably came really onto my radar probably 8 years ago. I didn't know quite how to get in then. It's kind of changed over the years as the race has grown. They've, of course, had to implement new ways to get in. So I've actually tried to get in before. So the way it works, or a way it worked, you had to do a qualifying race. Then you had to enter a lottery. So, I mean, it was only about a third of the people that even qualified into the lottery got in. And the first time I didn't get in. So that was whatever, kind of during the early parts of COVID, when I didn't get in. And then I actually had to requalify, go through the whole system again, because it kind of had evolved a little bit. So to get in, you can kind of do it through 2 ways. So kind of as their race has grown, they've added races around the world that are qualifying events. So you have to basically do one of them to receive something they call stones, which is just kind of a lottery ticket into the race. So you have to do a race that's equal length or equal difficulty. And then you get these stones, you throw them into a lottery. This year I got picked. So we did that in January. We found out I think it was February when we found out that, okay, we're picked. So I think it was about a third get in, after all that qualifying, to throw your name in. So it's a very established field. It'd be very similar to Boston, right? Like everyone's run 100 miles before. No one's going into this, as their first one. That's for sure.
Yeah, there's no weekend ultra marathon runners that are slogging through 180 kilometers, 10,000 meters uphill. That's not happening.
No. So
Charlie, you guys know each other, right? Sorry, go ahead, Greg.
No, go ahead. Charlie, go ahead.
Yeah, so we met a little bit on Strava, and I was kind of always a big fan of Greg's because I knew I had seen his marathon times and stuff, and I started following him. And then I know he's like also a coach, and so yeah, we met on Zwift, on Strava, and then I joined his Zwift racing team. But I imagine, so talking about how the field is, the only person that I know that's run this UTMB is Greg, and I know how much of an amazing athlete he is. So yeah, I would imagine it's a stacked field. So and then how hard it is to get in must be crazy. So
you guys,
congrats again. Anyways,
you were on the same Zwift team. What does that mean?
Yeah.
So there's another subculture. Yeah.
So I'll let, or Greg, go ahead, explain it.
Sure. So there's basically Zwift has racing, which is actually by far the funnest aspect of racing. So it's kind of like a beer league for indoor bike training. So it's actually just starting up again for the season. So they kind of go on 6-week blocks, I think it is. You do races, there's points, you need a team. Very much like the Tour de France, but you're all at your own home.
Same thing.
Very similar.
Aerodynamics don't matter too much though, but
yeah. So it has its own nuance, but it's fun and it's a good way to work really hard in the winter. So that runs now, I think, until March or so. So
you're on a team for 6 weeks, and there's like an A rider and a B rider and a C rider and a D rider type thing.
And yeah, maybe it doesn't always play out that way because Zwift has its own problems. Also, the internet cuts out, and who knows what happens, right? So it's kind of its own little weird world where we're all kind of racing together, trying to collect points for the team.
Okay,
but it is a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's super fun. I love it.
Can I ask you about before we get into the race? I want you to talk about the race because there's a lot of people that have been asking you, I'm sure, about this race, and this is it's an unbelievable accomplishment. Could you talk about your PBs and some of your greatest accomplishments in the last 10 years, or what the races you're the most proud of, like your best marathon, half marathon, your 100-miler, whatever you've done, just so the viewers who don't know you can get a taste?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so I've been in endurance sports since I was a kid. So I'm now, getting into the higher 40s. So it's 30 plus years. I started in cross country mountain biking. So way back when, I really got into that scene kind of in the 90s. Mountain biking was just booming.
In Steinbach?
Well, I actually ended up moving. So yeah, I lived in Steinbach. And of course, we'll get to the race aspects of UTMB of this. You have to train on the terrain you want to race on, right? So I ended up moving west right after high school and then lived out west for about 4.5 years, just a cross country mountain bike race. So that is my roots. So that is like, that's where I made my engine way back when. I got into running kind of when that racing was ending. And I raced, I was good, but I was never great. So, I could get to the top races, but I could never, reach the top steps, I guess you'd say. But I wanted to be active.
Greg, were you, I thought you were a professional biker at some point, or no?
Yeah. I raced pro. But that's what I mean. Like I was in the field.
Okay, that's pretty good.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. It's a long time ago. But I mean, I loved it. And I still actually love mountain bike racing and I follow it just as much as ever. I haven't been involved with it for a long time, but
would you have been able to like make a solid living doing that?
Some did for sure. Yeah. There was really a boom period, kind of that late 90s when, kind of the extreme sport thing was really taking off. And even cross-country mountain biking, so something kind of like cross-country skiing where we ride up the hill, right? You need the fitness, then you ride down the hill. It had a lot of money coming in. So when I was out west, we got into teams. They would, to travel us, equipment, et cetera, et cetera. Not great, but you could, when you're 18 years old, 19 years old, kind of dirt bagging it, living the dream. It was all right.
It's pretty nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So we
you
had
went
a lot
from
of fun.
so you were
Yeah.
biking and then you got into
Yes.
running. How old were you when you kind of started taking running somewhat seriously?
Yeah. So kind of by my mid 20s, I kind of knew my window or my opportunity in cycling was kind of peaked, right? Like you just know, right? The writing's on the wall. I've poured in everything I can, and this is the result. But I wanted to stay fit. And so my intro to running is actually really interesting. Now I was back in Steinbach, but I was living kind of south of town. And for whatever reason, I saw Runner's World magazine back when magazines were a thing. And I flipped it open and I was just flipping through. And there was an article about a guy he ran home from every subway station in New York. So he would like take the subway to, Broadway or something in New York and then run home wherever he lives in Queens or whatever, right? And so he made this challenge of like running home. So I'm like, oh, that's kind of fun, right? Like kind of the sense of adventure had always been kind of something that interested me. So I said, I wonder if I could run every street of Steinbach and make it home alive. Not in one shot, but like, because I was a total newbie in running. I had a big engine. So then I printed a map and then I just started running and I would see if I could make it 4 miles, run a couple of miles in Steinbach, run home. And I just did that. And I kind of just got, oh, that was kind of fun, right? Like it just, that sense of adventure, sense of like doing something different. And then, I was competitive, so it didn't take long. I'm like, oh, there's races, right? So then, by then I built up a little bit and I did a couple road races and had pretty much instant success because I did have a pretty good engine. And then just kind of got hooked. Running is so efficient, right? You can do it from your home anytime.
It's low overhead.
Very
as
low
Charlie
overhead,
says.
right? So Charlie knows riding a bike, right? Like it's work and like safety and all these kind of things.
Hey, I know that too. I know that
okay.
too.
Oh, sorry. Okay, sorry. I don't know. Yeah.
No. It's a joke. It's a running joke between us because Charlie's become a very, very good cyclist. But I went to Ironman Worlds last year, but I didn't know what I was doing. I was completely clueless and I just winged it. And now Charlie's learning how to really bike and he's crushing all my times from last year. It's kind of a running joke on the show. So I was joking. But yes.
But wait, you're running you've stepped it up a lot recently.
Yeah, my running's becoming good, but we're talking to Greg Penner now, so I'm embarrassed to say how proud I am of my runs in front of
So I want to interrupt your story a little bit, Greg. And when you talk about engine, maybe kind of explain what that means. Like what's the engine?
Yeah, well, that I just mean kind of my aerobic base. So my fitness, how efficient, I use energy, or I can use, just turn over oxygen, right? From oxygen, mix it with carbohydrates and the energy I get out. So just kind of that base. I do have a lifelong history of just doing sports. So you just get stronger, year to year. These kind of sports, of course, they reward consistency, right? We all know that. The more you can do over time, you get results, right? Like it's very good, return on investment over time, these sports.
And like you talked about how you've done that so developing this engine, to me, my understanding is it's something that you can't do it in 1 year or 2 years. Like it's something you've done your whole life. That's why you have this crazy, amazing engine, right? Am I understanding that correctly in that it's a thing that it's very, very long-term how you build that?
Very much so. Yeah. And you have to be patient, right? There's ups and downs. We all know that in training. There's going to be times when you feel on top of the world and times when, maybe an injury comes or you just don't feel, as strong, but staying at it, right? Keep on showing up. It does deliver.
So for anyone who's listening and for us, Charlie, it's kind of optimism there because we haven't been doing this that long. So the engine can improve every year, right? Sometimes people come on here to the show or runners will tell me, I'm never gonna get better, or it feels like it's taken forever to get better, but yet like the engine year in, year out can get better is what you're saying. And you've developed it over the last 30 years. What are your kind of, what's the marathon you're the most proud of, or the half, or let's start with those two. Like, I know you probably don't care that much for those times anymore, but just to put in perspective.
Yeah, I mean, my PBs are like low 230s in the marathon and
Wow.
113 or 12 or something in the half.
Okay.
So I mean, not good, right? Like again, good,
Who
really
would
good, right?
say that that's very good?
Well, but again, it's always, you know, we always have these standards, right? And I always appeal to be the best possible, right? So I mean, a 230 half or 230 marathon is really fast, but it's really fast and doesn't get you to the Olympics or to major games or those kind of things. So a really good athlete, but never a great athlete. If you can kind of separate that, always trying though, always trying, right? So I feel I've really maximized my genetic, you know, whatever I got, I've got the most out of it. So
I think if our listeners are like, none of our listeners are probably going to the Olympics except the 2 Olympians that we interviewed. Shout out to Tyler and Leanne. But it's I think for me, like, I'm never gonna go to the Olympics. But I'm pushing so hard to do a sub 3 at a major. Like, I'm investing everything I possibly can in this, and like, I'm getting so much joy out of it. And I realize I'm never going to be that good, but I'm still very proud of what I'm doing. And I would say anyone who's out there listening, like, most of you will never be Greg, but it's still impressive what you're doing. If you're running every week and or whatever you're doing.
absolutely.
Let's talk about some of your ultras you did before this. Cause I know you did some really cool races. Like, I know you did the backyard, you did you did the one in the White Shell there, you crushed that one. What's it called again? Right,
well,
you did that.
Yeah,
you do that race every year, I think.
Well, now I'm actually on one of the race directors for the Saffron Centennial.
Saffron Centennial.
Yeah, so different ultras I've done. Like, I've done the Canadian Death Race, which is kind of Canada's pinnacle, you know, tougher.
So how long is that
race.
one?
It's about 120 kilometers and has about half the elevation of UTMB. So it is also quite mountainous. But when you double it, yeah, it's just mind blowing. Do
you have a formula for the elevation relative to the distance? I'm sure you do.
Yeah, there's different. Yeah, you look at the climbs. Really, I look how steep they are. That tells a lot of the story, right? You can have gradual climbs. Like, I've done the Grand Canyon. Like, you do the rim to rim to rim, which is, you know, any trail runner bucket list. It's such a fun adventure. But that climbs a lot. That's, 3,000 meters of climbing if you do there and back. But it's much more gradual, right? Like, it's a much more friendly, hiker friendly trail. Where something like UTMB, some of those climbs are almost using your hands. Like, they're steep. So anyway, I've done that. I did a Kodiak 100 down in the States. I've done a 100-miler in Texas. A lot of my own kind of, a friend and I, we'd run 100K on the roads just for fun, quote unquote fun, those kind of things. I have a kind of a friend crew that's pretty crazy and pretty wild. Certainly a lot of times that I've gone over 50K in my life. We did the backyard this year, just the local one, as part of training. I thought I needed a good, 24-hour, just go through the motions of eating and nutrition and all those kind of things, and sleep deprivation. So I'm like, I'll throw that in.
Charlie and I are doing our first one in October.
There you go.
Sorry,
December.
Okay.
But, yeah, zero training, so we'll see how that goes. But
zero training, except for the 6 hours on the bike you did on Saturday and the 3 hours that you did on Sunday.
But I feel like this can be a whole different ball game. So that's why I'm hoping I get some insights from Greg here.
Yeah. We can get into the mental side, because that is certainly one of the key factors here.
That's one of the things I wrote down.
And then I've done Ironman. I did Ironman Hawaii years ago. I've done all the marathon majors, kind of different marathons here, there, and everywhere. So I feel I have a pretty good endurance. Like, I'm very driven to the bucket list events, or some of the biggest ones. So you can kind of see how UTMB comes into it. Other things that inspire me, Comrades Marathon has been a bucket list. Probably as long. Comrades. So that's in South Africa. So that's a road. 90 kilometers.
I've heard of that one.
It's quite famous. Yeah. So that was it was going to happen this year, but then I got into UTMB. So then I'm like, okay, well, that changed the whole entire plan. So
how far ahead do you plan stuff, Greg?
With these lotteries, the lottery thing, right? I mean, it's same with Ironman, right? You really need to plan if you're going to do an Ironman, if you're going to qualify for something, you have to be almost 2 years in advance in thinking, right? Like, just to get in and then plan it. So
Yeah.
So you wouldn't recommend qualifying for the Ironman Worlds and then racing it 5 weeks later?
Sometimes you just got to go for it, though, right?
That's what I did last year,
Yeah,
but
that's so
I
good.
think it was 6 weeks. But I'm so interested in this race because I know we will ask you about tips for backyard and stuff, but I do want to hear about this race. It's
Sure.
unbelievable. So you want to start about how like your when you get there and fly down, and you want to just talk about how you started this race and prep for it?
For sure. So, I mean, with anything, there's always a balance, right? I mean, I can start with, we arrived Tuesday, so the race starts Friday evening. But of course, we did a family vacation before that, knowing that the race was coming. But of course, you've flown to Europe, right? So it's a bit of a balance, a give and take. Ideal prep, no, but you do your best to be prepared, be mentally ready, those kind of things. So for the race, do you want to talk about the race itself, or do you want to talk about training, or?
I was going to ask you about training prep. So what was your mileage kind of peak, and how far out, and what were you focused on in your training week?
Elevation, places.
Was it like 100
nutrition.
kilometer days? Was it 500 kilometer weeks? I really have no idea. I doubt it was 500 kilometer weeks. But.
No, yeah, that would be impressive. Well, I mean, again, it's balance, right? So, I mean, one, we talked about engine. I do have a huge history of endurance sports. I think I've run, in life, about 50,000 miles. So I do have a lot of miles in my legs, right? So I have that to always call upon. So that's why something flat and long, like a long distance flat race, it gives me no fear, because I feel I could just kind of do that like seemingly forever. Adding the mountains does create a new element. So the way I kind of broke it down, like, okay, I know this thing is a beast for climbing and descending. The climbing aspect, of course, we live in Manitoba. We know our hills, right? I mean, we have Garbage Hill. In Steinbach, we have something called Abe's Hill, which is about a third the height of maybe Garbage Hill. It's tiny, right? Like ridiculous. Like it's a pimple on a pimple.
We have a Hamburger Hill in Marchand. We had.
Okay, yeah, there you go. Right, so we run that, and we think we're doing something like, oh, I did a hill workout, but like you're not. So I always said, well, I know the way to uphill is typically fitness and strength. We know that, right? Like, of course, I can't simulate a climb that's 1,200 meters, elevation gain, as UTMB has a few times. Like your 1,200 meters, it's straight shot. Like it's a huge climb. You can't fake that anywhere here. So what I did, though, I did a lot on the treadmill. So a lot of climbing on the treadmill. Again, it's never perfect, and it's not going to be perfect, right? Because my treadmill goes to 15%, and I would set it at that, and then vary the speed for the intensity.
What were you running at 15%?
Often, 5-minute mile or 5.0. So that's what, 12? Yeah, between 12 and 10-minute miles, kind of that pace.
15% incline. Wow.
And then you do that for an hour. You do it for an hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours. Like it's a weird session. Like
you must get strong pretty quick doing that.
Yeah, you do, but it's also like it's again, you're doing your best. So I mean, again, with anyone doing these kind of races from Manitoba, it's not quite right, because we've hiked steep trails, and now you're going over rocks and roots, and there's footwork and all these aspects that you just can't do. But again, it's something. So I said, I'm going to do what I can with what I can. So that was a big part. I made, starting in January, or kind of when I got into this race, I said, I need to do 3,000 meters every week, like ascending, no matter what. So that was like my baseline. So between my mileage, I don't care what my mileage is, but like if I don't get 3,000 meters either outside or inside, that week is not a success. And I think I did that pretty much every single one, except near the end. Adding to that, so I went to Holiday Mountain quite a few times. So the owner there was very gracious to me. I kind of told him what I was up to. There was another friend that was doing a mountain race at the time. He would let us train there. So I mean, that climb is 60 meters or so. Again, it's grindy. It's kind of up the ski slope, so it's not the pitch.
It's just, it puts it into perspective, like that climb is 60 meters, and you wanting to do 3,000 meters per week.
That's like doing 2 Boston Marathon equivalents of elevation gain per day. right? 240 meters at
Yeah.
Boston. So
Yeah.
2 per day, 2 Boston Marathon elevations. That's a lot of elevation gain.
Yeah. So I would go there and I'd spend 4 hours and just going back and forth up and down the hill. What that is really good for, though, is, I mean, a big aspect of this that flatliners struggle with is actually the downhill running. So you can get really fit to get uphill. I think there's ways we can kind of get close to faking that, right? Like through fitness, through treadmill, through steppers you could do. But it's the descending, like extending, extensive downhill running. And we know it's hard. Boston, right? It starts with 3 miles and you're just plummeting down. To not train for that can beat up your legs pretty quick. Your quads can go. And I've known that from all my mountain ultras that I've done, that is a point of like, I need to be very aware of. So then I was doing a lot of eccentric workout. So I typically always finish my treadmill session straight up with squats. So I have a squat rack right there. And then, you're fatigued and then you go to the squat rack and you work that a little bit just to kind of give that extra punch. Again, anything to get it, how can we be creative? What can we do? Those kind of things. So,
how many squats would you do after doing 2 hours at 15% incline?
Yeah, it varied. I do, 30 reps. I mean, not huge weight, but just repetitious. I do that for 10 minutes, just over and over, take a little break, do 30 more.
Charlie,
I'm
we're
like not pushing huge weight, but again, enough, 150 pounds or something like that, 120 pounds. So being creative. I did get to go to Whistler once, so that was kind of nice. So then I could run up in the mountains and get some major descending. And I did that right at the end of July, so kind of a month out. So,
we did.
That helped a lot.
Charlie and I did one of those cheater downhill marathons a few years back, and the whole thing was like, what was it, Charlie? 5,000 feet downhill or something, 4,000 feet downhill. Yeah. And remember how sore we were after for like weeks and weeks and months.
Yeah.
We were so sore because what do you call us? Flatlanders? Is
Absolutely.
That us?
Yeah.
We're
flatlanders.
That's us.
That's all of us. Yeah. That's all of us.
Well, I don't think you're a flatlander anymore.
I don't know. We'll see.
So, okay. So, like you started.
And then you talked about mileage. You were asking about mileage. So I think I averaged, it was about 105K. So for the year. So, but again, of course, I've had weeks of like every week. So if you average, for 2024, I've averaged about 105K. And again, a lot of that is a bit slower because you're on the treadmill grinding out these hills. So, 10 hours a week, nothing outrageous. Biggest week was probably 230, 240K. The week I did the backyard, obviously it's easy to bump up mileage pretty quickly, that kind of thing. So again, nothing too, people do a lot more. And you're trying to be efficient with your time and not make it totally dominate life, right? So
yeah, you're keeping.
You did 100 miles, right, at that backyard?
Yeah, 105.
Yeah. Okay.
But that went really well, and that was perfect for practicing nutrition, which is such a big part of these things, right? Because you can just go to your aid station and figure out what works for you and what's not working for you, and going through the night and just dealing with all that, things that are kind of new, right? Those are all kind of new aspects to the event that I would have to face. So
you started. I want to ask about these steeps. So I'm looking at your Strava. I'm looking at your race that day, and you did the first 10K. You were cruising. It looks like it was mostly flat, right? The first 10K. So this is 180K, right? 180 kilometers.
Yeah, just about that. Yeah. So it starts quite nice. It's in the town. It's extremely crowded. So I mean, here's another, there's wild aspects to this race. It starts at 6 p.m. Got there at 4. You line up. There's no real corrals. You just kind of go into this square, in the city center, and we sat on the cobblestones for 2 hours waiting for this thing to start. 30 degrees. There's 4 porta potties for 2,700 people starting this race.
Wow.
So you can imagine how that's going, right? So, very different than a race here. People would be up in arms over these kind of aspects. So, even like a couple kilometers into the race, you just see everyone just going off into the bush. Like they've been holding it here for hours. And I even had like 2 hours before, my start position was horrible. Like I should have been there 3 hours before to even get.
Because you were too far back?
Yeah, I just couldn't run. Like you're just, heel to foot, like just crowded. And you've seen the scenes of how many people come to watch this thing, right? So it's just
Yeah.
a
It's like,
rowdy
it looks like
crowd.
the Tour de France. They're just
Very
cramming you and
much,
you can't get through, right?
very much. So
What's
it's,
with
yeah,
the
you
French
couldn't,
people? Put up some barricades already. Jeez.
yeah. Well, yeah, at times you agree. The start, yeah, that leaves something to be desired, but the atmosphere itself, it's pretty amazing. So the Tour de France is a perfect, comparison.
Yeah, but people hit pedestrians and what's the guy's name last year who hit someone and like was injured? Like this happens every year at the
Oh,
Tour de France
absolutely. Yeah, yeah, it does. Yeah,
because people are so tight on them, right?
yeah, yeah.
Okay, and then you get into the elevation and some of these kilometers are like
But
200.
sorry, back to the start a second. So
Okay,
Greg,
go
so
ahead.
you had to slow down. So it's like kind of a narrow place where people run. It's like mile 11 at New York, I guess, or something.
Yeah, yeah, it's
Except
probably
way
single
worse.
car.
Way worse, probably. Yeah.
Yeah, single car width type of thing, and you have 2,700 people trying to go through with elevation, and then it was only a couple kilometers, and we hit a bit of a trail, kind of like a double track thing, and it was still lined with people.
And is
Um,
it self-seated or how does that work?
Totally self-seated. Just the
Yeah.
very few elite, they get kind of
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
preferential treatment to get to the start. So yeah, it's
Because
very
I could imagine
self-sufficient.
you on a flat, like you'd be pretty fast, I think, compared to the average, I would imagine. But yeah.
Yeah, I'd actually I'd hoped that I could be near the front because I knew I could run, right? So I mean, I got to
Yeah.
use my tools when I can. So
You
yeah,
had some sub 5Ks though early, a couple anyways. So decent speed for
Yeah, but
you
that
was slow.
for him that's
yeah,
He's walking.
106. That's 106 heart rate for him. Probably.
yeah, probably less. But just kidding.
So then it's still packed. Then it's packed, and
It
then
is.
some people like. So how far back were you of the race? Like, were you like in the middle,
Yeah,
or were you seated kind
yeah,
of in the back?
probably in the middle or
Okay,
so. I
and
think
you
I posted a
finished.
few. My Instagram has a few pictures, kind of where we were. So
Yeah, and you finished. So 46.7% didn't finish. 2,700 runners, and you finished
700th.
700. So you were in for
Wow,
sure the first quartile.
that's amazing. Wow.
Yeah, that's unbelievable. So you should have been seated way, 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 way higher, right? Way higher.
Yeah, yes and no. Well, we
Well,
can get into how my race actually went, but
if you just go by where you finished percentile wise, you should have been closer up. So how did the race go then?
yeah. So it's with any mount ultras, you're gonna find there's ups and downs, there's highs and lows, like really magnified. And I mean, you've run a lot of marathons, you've done Ironmans, right? There's highs, there's lows. Now these are much bigger, right? There's a lot of problem solving, issues that come up that you plan, or you always have a game plan, and then usually get kicked in the face, right? And you have to like come up with a new game plan kind of during it. For the most part, I felt very good going uphill, very strong. So you hit a one big climb. It's kind of the first climb to kind of separate people. So you go up. By the time you're at the top, it's kind of now it's starting to get dark. So you go headlamp on, all these kind of change aspects. You come down. So one of the ways to think of UTMB too. So as you go around the mountain, you're going village to village, and each village is kind of the aid station, and some of them are crewable. So you kind of run, into a village where everyone's come out to cheer and support, and it's rowdy and it's wild. So you run into the village, you get your aid, your water, whatever, and then you go straight back up the mountain and then down the mountain into another village. So that's kind of how the course can kind of be thought of, as just village to village with a mountain in between. I felt quite good on the climb. The first descent went really well. But with any training and life, my training had gone very well for UTMB. But 3 weeks before, so again, I lead various run groups, and we have a track workout session here in Steinbach and a few
Wednesday
other places,
morning
but
or
Tuesday mornings. Tuesday mornings, yeah. So yeah, we get 25 people out. Typically we'll have that tomorrow, that kind of thing. Anyway, we had a great workout, and I usually change shoes. Like I run to the workout, have shoes for the track, and then run home with different shoes. And just one of those moments of just life happens. I had put on Solomon running shoes, And Salomon running shoes have these like wire laces. I don't know if you're familiar with them. You kind of like they're really long, so they're actually a wire. It's not an actual lace, and the loop that comes out of it is about a foot long, and you're supposed to tuck it in. So there's this little pouch in your tongue. You put it in there, right? Because these things are big loops, and you're going to trip over them. I didn't do it, so I'm literally the track workout finished. I put these shoes on. I run, and about 100 feet, from putting these shoes on, my other foot. Again, I didn't know this at the time, but my other foot hooked into the lace, and I went down. Ended up, scraping up myself up pretty much head to toe, but I really hit my left knee. So that, all this, I got no overuse injuries, but that day hurt. I hobbled home, and I had to take off really from then to the race. Like I just couldn't, and it was really the downhill running. I tried to do some downhill running, but just the force on the knee was just too much. So we went to Europe, and I did a couple runs there just to kind of test. And I'm like, okay, I think it's there, but it's okay, right? I'm going to try. But by the second descent, it had come up just like barking, and like pain in my left knee. It's just the extension. And that is really the story of my race, battling that thing to get around the loop. So it was awful. It was actually
like pure
awful.
hell. It sounds like pure hell.
It was, yeah, pure hell. 30 years in sport, 35 years in sport, you dream of these races, right? You go, you've prepped, the family sacrifice, you've put a lot of money in, time, all these kind of things. And to be there, it's probably 5 hours in, and you're going down the hill, and you can't, like, you physically can't run. Like, there's just stabbing pain in your knee. It's very discouraging. And so it was probably the lowest I've ever been in any sporting event, ever. Early on, dealing with this thing, like, how in the world am I going to do this? Because, downhill running should be a strength, right? Or any running should be a strength of mine. And when you physically can't do it, but you're in the event, this is what I kind of face. So it really became the story of the whole thing. I had originally thought I could do about 30 hours, and I think that's still quite realistic to get around the loop. And I ended up doing 39 just to give it a perspective, because I was hobbling. I texted my wife and said, my knee thing is back. I don't know what to do. Of course, you're in the middle of the mountains. It's the middle of the night. You can't exactly, no one's you can't be rescued. You can't do anything. You still have to get yourself out. So that's really the story of overcoming that I'm proud of. Still quite disappointed because I just couldn't do it. I'm still dealing with the problem now. But just how do I get around this, this course within the time cut? The time cut is, I think, 48 hours or so to make the loop, because all of a sudden it's just a whole different mentality, right? I went from being a competitor to being like, I'm in deep trouble, right? Like you're in the middle of the sea without an oar. How do I get out of this? Like, it's that kind of feeling, like this feels hopeless.
Wow. Why didn't you quit?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, one, it's really hard to quit, because how do you get out, right? Like, you have to get out.
It's logistically hard to quit.
It was harder to quit than to keep going.
But it does. So anyway, you do this loop, and about at the halfway point is the first major crewable station. So by crewable, I mean that's where my wife and I had my brother-in-law and sister-in-law out to watch the race, as well as my son were there. So my wife was let in, and she knew. And like the descent into this, so it's Courmayeur, you're in Italy. It's like straight down. So we all have hiking poles, like running poles, and I was kind of using that to, like, kind of as a crutch, right? Like, to plant to get down the steep slope. So that was kind of my technique, but moving so slow. Like, I was being passed, like, people just zipping by, right? Because this is the time when you can make good time. I got there, and I was very low, and of course my wife is very sympathetic. Like, so when you're picking crew, I mean, you need different things, right? And sometimes it's funny elements, right? Like, you're seeing the person at the lowest low. She loves me, I love her. But like, sometimes you just need someone to say, like, suck it up or do what you can, right? Like, it's tough love. And she's way too nice to say those kind of things to me. So she was very emotional too, because she knew, she could see the distraught in me. And and these kind of things. So I just took that time at that aid station to just take more time. So I actually took an hour. I went to medical. What can they do?
Kilometer 84,
But,
right? In
yeah,
Coma.
yeah, exactly right. And I just sat there and I just had to reframe it. It's right. Like, this has been a goal to do this race. It's not gone the way, it's not going to go the way I wanted, but how can I salvage this? How can I enjoy this? How can I experience this and make this a positive experience? So it took time. But eventually after medical, bit of hope, and then you start with a big climb. And I was always strong on climbs because that just didn't force, didn't put pressure on the knee the same way. So when you still also, I can actually motor uphill. It's just the descending and sort of some of the flatter running that was causing the trouble. So, and then I was watching the time cuts because they have these, every time you're at an aid station, it says how much time you have before you get cut. One of my friends ended up getting cut just because it's kind of ruthless. Like, it's coming for you, right? Like the broom wagon is coming behind these
The
things.
Grim Reaper.
The Grim Reaper, yeah. So, kind of watching that. But then at times, and I'm like, I'm not losing time. I'm kind of, keeping it stable. So it kind of gives you hope, a reframing. Now it's just about completing, which is always the first goal, right? I mean, we got to be honest. These are our first, the competitive aspect was gone, but now it's like, I need to complete this thing. So you go to that, you keep on the nutrition, the hydration, doing all the things you can, and then, dealing with the issue as well as you can and staying positive.
Yeah, it's amazing, Greg. I think, I mean, your experience is kind of like, we've all gone through similar experiences, but like 100 times less maybe, or something like that. But it's like, so yeah, it's really inspiring. I think it's hard to reframe. I can't imagine, and then you got so much time to think about it. So how often were you seeing your wife? Like, was your wife able to kind of go and kind of meet you at these towns, or how does that work?
A little bit. So they have, I think it's 5 crewable stations out of 12 where they can, like, a crew person can come. She signed me at 3. And by the end, it's the middle of the night for the second time for them, right? Like, it's hard on any crew.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
And all those kind of things. I just said, I'm good. I'm going to make it. I can just use the normal aid stations and just I'll just work and say, you try to get sleep as best you can. And so I saw her 3 times.
It's crazy that you spent an hour and 2 minutes at the kilometer 84, reevaluating, sitting down, just sat down on a chair. That's the exact same time that I spent in T1 in Des Moines after my swim. No, I'm kidding. I spent like 20 minutes because I was like,
oh, really?
I'm sure in my mind, I was going through the same stuff you were going through. It felt like the world's hardest thing to ever do. So like Charlie mentioned, we've all kind of gone through this stuff, but how do you mental resilience, mental strength, mental battle? What do you do? Why do you think you're good at it? You're good at it. Obviously, you're good at overcoming obstacles on the course. What makes you different? What do you have? And what are some tricks?
Well, probably experience is one, right? You've been in this situation before. I think that always is something. And really, with any ultra or any endurance sport, let's face it, you don't get anywhere by sitting still, in a sense, right? And in life, right? Like, we all have problems. We all have, maybe sometimes we're full of anxiety, and then we get in that circle, right? Like, things just we just spiral and we're spinning our wheels and we just can't move. The movement is the most powerful thing in anything, right? So take a step, crawl, move, anything, right? Fix your eyes on 100 feet ahead, 100 meters ahead, and just get there. And and then you get there and you throw out the line and pull yourself into the next one, just over and over and over again. And then as we do that, we all know that as we come out of something like, our thoughts, bad situation, we start to gain a bit of momentum again. Things reframe, things change in our minds, and we can get going. And suddenly you've forgotten about your problems, and now you're focused on what's ahead. So I think it's just doing that over and over and over, knowing that, well, like, being like, it's not going to help, right? Like, being there, I need to move and see. And so if I get the broom wagon and they get me, so what? At least I tried. So
Yeah.
I remember my dad when I was going through what I thought was the hardest thing in my life, my first ever Ironman, and I couldn't move on the jog after doing all the biking. I wasn't. It was too hard. It was too hard for me. It was too hot, and I said, I want to quit. I'm done. I don't need to do this. And he said 3 words: just keep moving. That's all he said. He texted me, just keep moving, and I just looked. Just keep moving. When you just said that just now, I just got shivers down my spine thinking of how that had impacted me positively that day. Just keep moving. So powerful.
So yeah, and then you just again, I kind of had reframed the race from something that I was competitive to just enjoying it, because I mean, here I am in the French Alps, right? You're 2,500 meters. There's glaciers around you. It's unbelievable. Like, what a gift to be there, and just to get to see it all, especially in a day. People do the loop around is very popular for hiking and trekking. It's 8 to 10 days is the popular way to do it. So here you're doing it in a day and a half or whatever, right? So you're getting to see a lot in a short amount of time, and just like, what's around the corner, let's go see, right? Let's push and see what's there. But
can I ask you
again,
about, sorry,
yeah. Oh, well, I was just going to say, I'd always maintain strength on the climb. So that also gave me hope, because as soon as we got to any steep climb, which there's a lot of, I would pass a lot of people, and it was just on the descending or kind of the shallow grades where I couldn't run. So I was probably faster uphill than I was downhill.
were you close to actually pulling the chute? How close were you? And was there a point where you're like, that's over now? And when was that point?
Well,
Like,
it was that kind of,
overcome?
yeah, that halfway point. Like, I came
Okay.
in there so low, like,
You were like, I'm out, I'm done.
well, I never said the words, but they had been expressed through emotion, just like, this is impossible. Like, it's almost humiliating, right? Like, you physically can't do what you do, and now you're in this race, and it's just like, this is going so poor, and it's painful and it's slow, and it sucks, right? Like, that's why I took some time to reset, reframe. What's this event mean to you? What's it mean to my family? My son's there, and of course he's like, go dad, just go finish this thing. Like, who cares, right? Like,
There's only 100 kilometers left.
only 100 kilometers yet, yeah, and like 6,000 meters of climbing or something like
6,000
that.
meters of climb. You got this.
Yeah,
It's
you
pretty
got
much
this,
done.
man.
And you keep talking about when you say this, we qualified for this, we qualified. Is it you and a buddy, or are you talking about you and your crew?
Yeah, so very uniquely, so I had a friend from Vancouver who also qualified. So we've been kind of lifelong endurance sport friends, buddies, those kind of things. He mountain bike raced way back with me in the 90s. We've kind of gone through running and those kind of things. So he also tried to qualify before, didn't get in, and he got in this year, the same year I did. Sadly, he couldn't finish. He kind of, the broom wagon got him, but he's ready to go back. So I'm looking forward to maybe even go helping him get around the loop.
Yeah, or me in 4 years.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. You talked about one of your records, which you broke a lot of personal bests here, and longest run, longest activity, most vertical. You did that. Longest time awake, 50 hours. I want to ask about that. How is that? Or what are you doing to stay awake 50 hours? Are you like doing Red Bull, or what are you doing?
A little bit. So that actually became kind of a fun thing, because I'm a guy that actually, I really like my sleep. So I'm not good company after 9 p.m. Like a typical endurance sport, right? Endurance sport athlete, we get up super early, we do our thing. By the time it's late evening, we're not very fun people typically, right? So
Like Charlie.
that's me.
Yeah. Totally
I don't want to be around Charlie after
9 o'clock. Okay, gotta get to bed.
Gotta go. Yeah. So I mean, that's that. Everyone that knows me, that is sort of my life. So it became like the backyard was the first time really going through the night doing physical activity, and I'm like, that actually went pretty well, because I just you keep moving, that kind of thing. And so this one really almost became fun. Like later on, I'm like, how long can I actually be awake before, like, what's the limit, right? Like, I don't know. I've never done this. I've never pushed this kind of way. So it's like, then you're doing the math, like, I've been awake for over 2 days already. Like, how is this even possible? So it kind of became fun. By the time we finished, though, you finish the race, and like, I could fall asleep, like on the concrete, just put me down, I'd be out. Like, it was just the heaviness of sleep was so high after the event. But during, you're kind of going. I did have a few hallucinations, so that people talk about that, like, and
Nice.
I never experienced that, but like, it's just weird things because you're also under headlight, right? For so much, like 20 hours of this race for me was in the dark, or if not more, like dark. So I'm under headlamp. So you're looking at those bright white lights, right? Kind of leading the way. So I think your eyes start to kind of get fatigued from that. So I'd be in high up in the mountains, and like you kind of, you're looking around and you're seeing things. You're seeing buildings. I saw like some kind of like cartoon creature. Like, I know it sounds bizarre, but like I could not figure. It was like kind of like a Donald Duck, Ronald McDonald guy. Like, and then I
Whoa.
got closer, and it was a person that was ironically going to the bathroom. Like, in just the weirdest. Like, but the mind can't comprehend. Like, it's just weird. And so it's just like, okay, shake out of that. Like, but you see buildings and like imagining things around the corner, and they're not there.
Oh,
So it's kind of fun though, right? Like, I've never been here. Like, what's this going to be like? I'm
So,
experiencing something for the first
but
time.
you had done some previous 100 milers, right? Like before this.
Yeah, but
So,
they were a
but you
lot
never
half
got
the time.
you never got hallucinations in those. So
Half the time, and they start early in the morning, right? So then
yeah,
it's almost like a normal
it's almost like
24-hour
you're
day.
dreaming awake, maybe, right? Kind of thing.
Very much, yeah. That's actually what I said to my wife. It's exactly like that.
Interesting.
Just weird things. So very kind of a neat way to explore kind of what happens to the body and the mind.
okay. Before getting into tips for us and other runners, what's next on the calendar for Greg? What do you want to do? What are like you've
Mm-hmm.
kind of conquered this mountain?
Mm-hmm.
What else?
Yeah, so the big ones, like I mentioned, the Comrades Marathon in South Africa, that one's kind of loomed for a really long time. So that's 90 kilometers on the road. They get about 20,000 people in it. So it's the largest road marathon or road ultra in the world. I do kind of want to get back a little bit to my roots, or what's easier to train for. So kind of in the speed element. I'll probably run Boston. I'm kind of thinking of clicking register right now, right? It's the window for registering for Boston right now for next year.
I
Just to
just
do,
did today. I just did
there you
today. It was
go.
fun.
Yeah. So we got all week to decide, but from our group, there's probably a good amount of people going. So I thought I'd go. There's some races that are on the road that are kind of in the ultra distance, like doing a 24-hour on the road. I think that actually suits me really well because I have the road speed. It's flat, right? I can train for it.
Yeah, that's what you
You kind
need,
of
Greg. That's what you
see
need. You
what's
need the longest race you can find that's flat. I don't think a lot of people are going to beat you.
no. I'd be pretty excited to do that, and I know there's some good opportunities there. So that might be what's in 2025 yet.
Do you care about kind of those 240 milers or that kind of stuff? Is that on your radar at all?
Not really. I mean, never say never, right? But I mean, they keep on pushing the distance of these things, right? But is it a long hike? Is it a long walk? What's the goal of it? It's a lot of sacrifice for everybody too, right? You're going to be gone for 4 days, but never say never. Never say
Yeah,
never.
are there long endurance bike races that exist?
Absolutely. I mean, the most famous is Race Across America. So
Okay.
that could be someone else you could interview. Arvid Lowen from Winnipeg. I don't know if you know the name. He's in his mid 60s by now, but he's done incredible things in the endurance, like ultra bike side of things, including the Race Across America. So that's basically nonstop, San Diego to, I think they go into Maryland or somewhere, nonstop, and they do it in ridiculous, like it's just over a week type of thing. Um, so he was very successful at that, a Winnipeg man
Okay.
who raised a lot of money for charity. Really, really good man. So there is absolutely 24-hour mountain bike
That's
races.
a thing that I'm kind of interested in. Something
Okay.
long in cycling. But
Yeah, do Race Across America. Google that. You'll get a lot of good YouTube videos there too and be inspired.
Charlie, you got to start with your Race Across Manitoba. Start with that.
yeah, I want to do Manitoba in a day. But
Yeah, that's super cool.
Yeah, do that.
Send me a text. I'd be into that. 450K, 480K, something like that, right?
Yeah. Depending if you cut through, if you go around 505 or something like that. I ran across it last year. It was fun.
You did, yeah. You got a couple provinces down, right?
I got 2 down, yeah. I want to ask you about advice because Charlie and I are doing our first backyard. I think closer to your, like the stuff that you talk about really drives me. Like I love long distances on the road. I went out and I did my first 100K just by myself the other day, and I had so much fun doing it. Just left my parents' place and jogged to the city, Marchand to Winnipeg, and that was so fun. And you know, we're doing our first backyard. Do you have tips for us? Nutrition, hydration, mental, anything that you can think of. And then I'm going to ask you about tips for listeners who are just kind of starting and they're finding it hard, or maybe it's hard for you because it's been so long, but maybe start with us. Tips for us for
sure for backyard
for our longer races that are coming up.
Yeah, well, I mean, you guys are both good runners, so you have to use that to your advantage, right? So I don't know which course. Where are you running? Or
St. George?
It's very flat.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
it's very flat. It's like you would think St. George, there's mountains all around, but the course is actually super flat. So
good. So you have to use running to your advantage. So what I did with our local backyard, I would kind of do the run walk, but like, you know, you do kind of do the math. Well, 4.1 miles, that's not that much to run per hour. And so I'd always kind of I ran in the where there was trees or covers. And then I'd walk when there was no coverage, like from the sun, just to kind of keep body temperature down. I was very cognizant of that. Like, so run when you can, like when there's, you know, the most shade, that kind of thing. And then walk when there's not, just because you want to keep the body temperature down as long as possible. I always have cold. So every time you get back to that aid station, it's just cold towels, cold drinks, ice on you, because you just want to keep that down always. I brought a scale, so that's kind of a fun one that people thought, oh, what are you doing with that? Because I want to know what kind of water weight I'm losing, right? So when we did our backyard, it was very hot and humid. You're losing a lot of fluid. How do you maintain? What do you know? How do you know if you're maintaining enough, right? So
wow, I
had that.
Never thought of that.
So I'd go on the scale every time, write it down, and just to kind of make sure that I was, you know, staying, you know, relatively close to, you know, equal. And that worked really well because then you just bump up fluid, that kind of thing. Nutrition, you need to have everything, you know, under the sun with you. You'll find I do like drinking a lot of nutrition. So, you know, a lot of the, you know, the new drinks are very high calorie. Sodium content is quite high. You want to make sure that's all, you know, 1,000 milligrams per hour, 400 calories per hour. You can go a long way. Caffeine.
Are you taking any fat, or is it mostly just carbs and a bit of protein?
Yeah, pretty much fat or carbs and a little bit of protein to taste, though, right? I mean, you're eating potato chips; those are fatty. You're eating cookies; those are fatty. Like nothing outrageous. So, to me, I'm very much a carb. I believe in them.
Yeah.
Me too.
yeah.
Okay, then I want to ask you about. You've done a lot of miles. You've done 50,000 miles. So anyone who's training or stuff, you're also a coach, a top level coach and a leader in the community here. What would you say, you know, if you could talk to all the runners out there? You know, I always say, I'm not an expert, but I always say, just do more miles, less pace. That's what I say. I'm sure you got all of your Gregisms. Do you want to share some of them with?
For sure. Well, I'd agree with that. You know, number one, don't compare yourself. I mean, that is such a dangerous thing that we have in our time and all times. But, you know, we have Instagram, we have Strava. We see a lot of things. We see a lot of numbers. What Rob, you can do, what Charlie can do, what I can do, that's what we can do. No one should be trying to replicate exactly what we're doing at any time. So work on you. And again, we talked about the word consistency. So it doesn't have to be great, right? So we go into Strava and we see, oh, you just ran 100 kilometers. Like, wow, that's incredible, right? I can't even. No, you have to focus on you and consistency. So if it's 5 kilometers, you know, if that's, you know, try to do that as consistently as you can, day after day, build up. Again, like you said, easy. Don't worry about pace so much. But again, the more days you can get in of a consistent volume, that's what reaps the benefits. And before you know it, you're going to be doing a whole hoops more. Your heart rate will drop, your efficiency will go up, you know, the way you burn fat, energy, all those things improve so quickly with consistency. So I focus on that far greater than saying running some great distance, right? Because we're caught up in it. We see these great numbers, but no, just focus on like a small but repeatable number as much as you can per week. And
I feel like frequency is a thing that like just even like doing it every day, even if it's a lot less than having that big run, like it's I feel for me that makes it that's like just having that little amount every day helps anyways, but it's different for everybody obviously. But
it doesn't need to be a hero workout or, you know, something you're chasing a lot of kudos or likes on something. Just consistency is really the magic.
Awesome. So I can just compare myself to my brother, not to anyone else.
Well, as long as you're better than your brother.
Well, I'm better at
definitely. He's definitely better
at
than
a lot.
me. He's definitely better than me right now. Well, not on the bike though.
I have what do I have on you right now? Just running. You have swimming and biking. No, swimming I might beat you still. Swimming I might still beat.
I think it would be a good
be
match
close.
if we go on right now, but
yeah, be a good match. Have you ever done like have you ever thought of doing a 10K or a 15K swim race or something like that? Correct. You know,
I did. Yeah, I did my Ironman days. I kind of thought, I mean, maybe I should do Ultraman. I kind of thought that after, like for a while, like because I love the bike. I mean, I love to bike ride. I love to run. But the swimming does kind of get me. Like, do I really want to swim that long in a pool or in training? If it's open water, it's one thing, right? Like we all love open water. But to go in the pool and be consistently doing big sessions, it's not to me. It's not the most enjoyable.
Yeah. So what I get from you, Greg, is that you love the outdoors, you love adventure, and like indoor swimming doesn't really fit into that.
I think you said it quite wisely there, Charlie.
Yeah. But he'll come when we do our London to Paris bike.
Oh, Greg would crush the London to Paris triathlon.
Yeah. So
have you ever heard of this?
That Charlie invented.
So, yeah. Oh, he invented it. No.
Well, we invented the podcast, but after the podcast, I'm like, wow, we should do that, Charlie. So I Googled
like swim the channel or
yeah, you bike from London to the border. Sorry, from Paris to
you run. No, ours is you bike from Paris to Dover or whatever.
Calais. Then you swim the 21 miles across, and then
you run. Then you run to London.
Run back.
Yeah,
I'm sure it's been done.
50 sometimes it's been done. Yeah. But we thought we were like inventing something. We didn't know. But you'd be good at that, obviously. You'd be good at all these long distance.
Well, the channel swim, that's a whole other beast, right? I mean,
do you want to do that? Is that kind of want to do that now that we talked about it, Charlie?
The swim, I don't really want to do it.
I don't know. They don't even wetsuit it, right? I mean,
No, I'm wetsuiting it.
Some of them did it without, and some did with. Yeah.
Okay. To be an official channel swimmer, you can't do it with a wetsuit.
Yeah, you got to do it without. Yeah.
Like brutal.
I don't want to die though. Like I don't want to.
That's the problem.
Doing all these endurance things, but I don't want to die. I like my life. So maybe that one's out for now. Okay. Well, hey, I want to respect your time, Greg. This was so awesome, and maybe down the line, once things settle down for you or something, we could bring you on just to talk about training. That'd be fun to talk about training.
Yeah, I'll just give a little plug to our group. So I run a company called Raceday Endurance. So we're just an endurance sport coaching and a team. I live in Steinbach, but we're based kind of all over the place. We have athletes all over Manitoba, in Ontario, that kind of thing now to come to us. We have 2 other coaches. My wife helps out with the team. And it's really focused on the athletes that really want to achieve more in sport, that have been kind of in endurance sport for a long time, but are like, I want to, BQ, or I want to qualify for this race or do some crazy adventure. Those are the kind of athletes that we typically work with. We love it. I love talking training, trying to figure out all the pieces of the puzzle to make something work for a person in their life, based around their family, work, history, all those kind of things. That is truly my joy. We have about 60 to 70 people in our group. And we have a great time.
We know quite a few of them. And they're all really good athletes. Most of them, though. Anyways, that we know.
I'm gonna come one point. Just kind of come for a Tuesday, just to hang out with you.
You should. Yeah, we have a lot of fun.
Yeah. Okay. Well, obviously the athletes that work with Greg, they're like Jayla won the Manitoba Marathon. Did she not this year?
Second.
Third.
Third. Podium for like a girl from Steinbach, LaBroquerie, who's working with you. That's pretty unbelievable. That's a huge race. So anyways, you work with a lot of elite athletes, and from what I hear, they love working with you. So thanks for coming on, Greg.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. We'll get you back on to talk training because that's Charlie's passion. I love it too. I love it. I love it. It's so fun. Training for this race, training for this Chicago Marathon has been the most fun of my training ever in my life. So it's so fun. Thanks so much for listening, guys. Thanks for tuning in. We are The Running Journey. We'd appreciate if you took 10 seconds, give us a 5-star wherever you listen to your podcast, and write a little comment. Tell your friends, family, share this episode, and we will see you in the next video. Thank you, Greg Penner today, our guest who just completed UTMB. Congratulations, and thanks so much for being with us.
Congrats.